Welcome to Canadian Innovators, the show that celebrates innovation, entrepreneurs, and the Canadian spirit. I'm Jocelyn Bamford, and every week we introduce a new entrepreneur or expert in the economy to tell their stories and unpack the challenges of keeping jobs in Canada, as well as share ideas for economic growth and prosperity. Today on the program, we are going to discuss building a brand. Joining us and providing her insights is Jasmine Laine, podcaster, influencer, and broadcaster. Jasmine has built her podcast, The Jasmine Lane Show, breaking into the top 10 podcasts in Canada with millions of views across platforms. Jasmine said she's on a mission to challenge the mainstream media and empower the next generation of thinkers. Welcome to the program, Jasmine.
Thank you so much. Happy to see you.
Jasmine, you are a rising podcast personality. Can you walk the viewers through your journey from promotions assistance to where you are today?
My goodness, that's a long one. I worked in traditional media for about 11 years or so. And it honestly wasn't until some personal tragedy in my own life where there was a death in my family. And I had started to hear a lot of other people say the exact same things that they said before they took their life. And I felt like I was met with a point of no return where I absolutely had to start speaking about so many things that people were being vilified for. And I really did just kind of take the plunge. I quit my job. I had no money. I had no backing, nothing at all. I had a camera and a microphone, and away we went.
Well, and you have used that microphone well, always entertaining on the Jasmine Lane Show. Jasmine, there's lots of podcasters and folks that want to be podcasters. Tell us about your rise and what makes the Jasmine Lane Show so successful.
I think authenticity and consistency is everything. Again, coming from mainstream media myself, when somebody can sense that you don't really believe in what you say, it's not that genuine or it's misguided, they can smell that from a mile away. And I think the difference between my show is even when I was just starting out and I didn't have a lot of views or anything like that, I just kept pushing forward. I kept posting no matter what. I had a dream and I was going to achieve it. And, I say what I think, and I really do believe what I say, and I show evidence behind why I think certain things. And I think another really big difference too is that there's so many media platforms where they talk at their audience, whereas for me, I'm a human being and I'm communicating with other human beings. And so I try to talk with them and I walk through my train of thought from point A to point B with all of the sources in it for why I ended at a certain conclusion. And so I think that, to follow the story, no matter where it goes, even when it gets uncomfortable, is why the numbers have grown so massively, which was completely unexpected to me. I'm still blown away by it.
So Jasmine, how does one go about building a brand?
I would say the first thing is to know your why. Because if you don't know why you're doing something, and if your why is simply because you want clicks or views or you want the attention, you're going to fail. You have to have a genuine why where you're aiming up, you have a dream and a goal and a service and something that you think can help people around you. So that's really important, as well as I had mentioned before, the consistency aspect, to be as consistent as humanly possible, and to show up reliably no matter what. And also to remember that your audience is your brand. Your audience is everything. And they're not just people, they're not just numbers on a spreadsheet. They're real people who really matter and their lives matter and they're watching you for a reason. And use that reason to help guide you into the most honest, truthful, meaningful version of yourself and what you're able to provide.
So you make it look so easy, but can you tell us how much time, and we just got about 30 seconds left, it takes to produce one episode?
Whew, my goodness. I would say recording, it probably takes me at least 2 hours. And many times too, I'll be researching while I'm filming. And I'm a one-man show. I don't have any team. I edit all my stuff on my own. So between researching, recording, and all of that stuff, I would say like an average workday for me, honestly, is probably around 10 hours minimum.
Well, you make it look so simple. We're going to go to break. More with Jasmine Lane as we talk about building the Jasmine Lane Show and her brand on Canadian Innovators when we return. Don't go away. We're back. I'm speaking with Canadian podcaster, broadcaster, and entrepreneur Jasmine Lane. Jasmine, tell us about the transition from mainstream media to independent media. You talked a little bit about the motivation, but how did you find that transition, and which do you like better?
Well, I'll start off with your final question. Definitely independent media. It's it's very interesting to go from working for somebody else for so many years to suddenly working for yourself and realizing that having to where you only have like a 2 week vacation period and how ridiculous that actually is. But so I would say that for sure. But you know, the transition itself was one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life. It was the biggest risk I've ever taken, but I had to. There was no other option for me at that point in time. And I really do think that it came down to me following my conscience. And I remember when I left my last career, 11 years, I just finished winning an award for the Leaders of Tomorrow. And I remember calling my mom and I said, Mom, I don't have a job anymore. And I'm going to try this thing. And if it doesn't work within 5 months, I'm going to get a job at Winners, I guess. But I need to try this. I feel so driven to just try this and put everything I can into it. So could you help me with grocery money or something for the next couple of months? And of course, my mom said yes. But when I left my job behind, I didn't get a severance. I didn't get anything. I had one final paycheck and then I had no income for the foreseeable future. But thankfully, that hard work paid off, that consistency paid off. And I ended up being okay within about 3 months of my 5 month goal.
So in your journey, let's focus a little bit about that. Were there ever times that you thought, I just can't do it? Not going to be a success, or did you always have that belief in the pit of your stomach that you could make it happen?
I still don't believe that I can do it and that I'm doing it. So, no, I would say I had zero confidence going into it. I really did just have this dream and this hope, and it just something that I felt morally obligated to do. And I let Jesus take the wheel and prayed for the best, and lo and behold, here we are. But I say that all the time for people, and I give this advice to people who are starting up constantly too, where if you want to start something like this, you will hit a moment or many moments where you're going to want to quit. And in those moments, it is absolutely imperative that you do not quit, because 99% of other people quit when they reach those exact same moments. So if you can power through that, you are far more likely to actually have any sort of success that you dream of. And it really is just a matter of grinding through the hardest moments and the most, I don't know, the difficult times, the inconsistency at times, even low revenue, whatever it may be. If you want to do something, you have to power through. Don't give up like everybody else does.
So tenacity is your number one. Any other advice for citizen journalists that want to follow in your footsteps?
I would say number one is truly just to start doing it. I started doing this in the easiest way imaginable with my cell phone and my poor audio coming out of my cell phone camera. And I really do think that step number one is just to start. So that would be my first and foremost. Stop giving your opinions from faceless accounts. Just put your real voice out there. Do your research, know your arguments. And also, when you disagree with people, there's no need to try to eviscerate each other. Learn from those people, harden yourself to certain arguments, or become warmer with certain arguments. I don't necessarily believe that there's a guaranteed right or wrong. There's always nuance in situations. And so if you take that nuance and you're able to formalize your opinion about it a little bit more and learn from it, you are going to just be an absolute superpower. But you can't do any of that if you don't start. So pick up your cell phone, start in any way, shape, or form. That would be my best advice.
So tell us about your most viral video, and then the video you're most proud of. And we just got about under a minute.
I'll be honest, my most viral video is one that I never saw coming. I was actually discussing India and how India is a democratic nation, but how much they've surged in immigration numbers since. And somehow that has garnered well over 1 million views alone, which is crazy to me. um, Never saw that one coming. And I would say the videos I'm most favorite of are probably my long form interviews that I do with, Pierre Poilievre or the US Ambassador Pete Hoekstra as an example, as well as a lot of my videos with the Canada US relationship and trying to figure out Donald Trump.
Yeah, a hot topic now. We need to go to break, but we'll be right back on Canadian Innovators. Don't go away. Welcome back. I'm Jocelyn Bamford. My guest today is podcaster, broadcaster Jasmine Laine from the Jasmine Lane Show. Jasmine, you focus heavily on political commentary daily. Can you provide your thoughts on the direction of Canada during the past few years?
Well, it hasn't been good. I think it's one of those things. It's quite frustrating to go through the data, and you can see in all of these analytics how much so many different sectors of the Canadian economy, our quality of life, and the systems and institutions put in place to help us have actually been harming us. And there has been a decline across the board, almost everywhere. There might be little blips here and there, of course, but the overall picture has been grim for quite a long time now. And I think that Canadians have been really patient, and patience is running out. And I just I don't quite understand how we continue to elect the same party that does all of this to us time and time again. I think there's been a lot of poorly vetted information that's come out that has definitely influenced the minds of people, and ultimately as well, a lot of people, their politics has become their identity. And it's very difficult to change your mind when it would be personally humiliating to you to admit that your entire identity was wrong, right? So I think there's an uphill battle for sure, but I do have a lot of hope that we will end up getting on the right track. Will it be under this government? I don't think so. um, but yeah, it's rough. It is really rough. But I do also believe that awareness and just saying what you think is the first step toward real change that every single one of us can participate in.
Yeah, and Jasmine, for years you've been advocating for a strong North America, and it seems like Prime Minister Carney is starting to agree. Let's see a clip from your most recent podcast, and we'll chat more about it afterwards.
JD Vance, I think in Europe, what do you say? In Washington, there's a new sheriff. Under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public's square, agree or disagree. Okay? We want these debates, and, we'll participate in them. But what we are not in favor of are some of the movements that we see on a global basis that start to limit free speech and limit debate. We're not afraid of debate. We love debate, okay? But let it be fair and honest debate. And that is what the U.S. government, that is what Donald Trump, and that's what J.D. Vance and this whole team will fight for.
That was a great interview. Jasmine, anything you'd like to add to what the ambassador had just said?
I truly believe that the US Ambassador, Pete Hoekstra, is probably one of the most misunderstood individuals in politics in Canada. He is a very genuine man he's sharp, and there's no BS, like he will just tell you exactly as it is, which I personally find to be incredibly refreshing because I always know where I stand with him. I always know where things stand with him. And I've interviewed him 4 times now, which is far more than the CBC. I'll say. But I do have a good relationship with him as well as other Americans. And I think that we're in a weird place in Canada where it seems as though there is a very big disconnect, not just politically, but also ideologically in terms of free speech and just freedom in general. America, Trump's administration are very, very big on that, as they should be. And it seems as though they're encouraging so many other Western nations who have kind of lost sight of that to also embrace what it actually means to be in a democratic nation and to serve your people. And I wish more Canadians would pay attention to that instead of getting distracted by the rhetoric going back and forth or, hating the Trump administration more than they love their own country.
Absolutely. And you've been a strong advocate of how great North America could be if we could get the two countries together. What would you do to facilitate that moving forward to smooth the relationship over? We only have about 30 seconds.
I think step number one is good diplomacy. The elbows up rhetoric was not great. We actually had former US ambassador, she was a trade representative, if I'm not mistaken, who was just on CTV News talking about how harmful the elbows up narrative really was for Canada. And, it's one thing to not want to feel small. However, when you have 75% or more of your trade going to one nation, you need to have good diplomacy with them.
Absolutely. We need a deal, and we need a deal fast, especially harmful for small to medium sized business. We got to go to break. We'll be right back on Canadian Innovators. Welcome back. My guest today is Canadian podcaster and entrepreneur Jasmine Laine. Jasmine, let's talk about the federal bill C11 and 18. How would that affect your business and independent journalists?
A lot. I've actually already lost about 50% of my views and income since the latest CRTC decision from Bill C11. I recall working in traditional media back in 2023 when these bills were first passed. And myself, my colleagues, all of us were so unbelievably concerned about the direction that this could go into, because as is usual, there was a lot of incredibly vague language. And I mean, as an example, with Bill C11 and C18, it's all about defining Canadian content. Well, how on earth does a bureaucracy with people who we've never elected and people who we don't even know the names of in most cases know what Canadian content is? And then to also manipulate algorithms to promote Canadian content. And in their own writing, actually, from their recent decision just about 2 weeks ago now, it specifically said that they have no way to determine the metrics. Like, there's no way to check if it's actually working. And also that platforms must show Canadian content even when viewers are not searching for it. And there is a whole lot of indirect harm that causes, because if you have a mandated outcome, you have to manipulate something in the background because it's inorganic, right? And so what they define as Canadian content as well includes Indigenous voices. There's a lot of DEI practices in it in terms of marginalized groups, as well as legacy outlets. That's what is counted as Canadian content, and that's what's being pushed. So you're giving an upper hand to all of these other businesses that already have immense amounts of funding, while excluding people such as myself, and not just doing politics either. I have friends who have cooking channels that have felt the harms of this as well. And by manipulating the algorithms in the way that they do to achieve this end outcome, you also send bad signals to global algorithms. Because if you have a video that the audience loves, but then it just suddenly stops midway through, it stops getting promoted, nobody's seeing it. Well, now you're limiting the reach for that video through the global networks as well. I mean, as an example, pre-2026, my new viewers per video was anywhere from 14 to 26%, which is a really good metric. And post 2026, it's 1.8. So it's funny to me and ironic that the same government who frequently insults anybody who has a different opinion as being in an echo chamber is quite literally creating echo chambers where they are not showing any alternative thought or creativity or work done by other Canadians, all in a bid to promote Canadian content and who's allowed to tell Canada's stories. I think overall, honestly, the biggest thing is if your end goal is to promote Canadian content, the worst way you could ever go about that is to isolate Canadian content and stories from being heard by the world and from being heard by your fellow citizens. There's been so many issues with Bill C-11 and C-18. And the fact too, C-18 forced platforms to pay for linking Canadian news. And what did we see from that? You have Google search results that are a little bit manipulated. You can run tests on that on your own. If you ever want to search a news story, tell me how many pages you have to scroll to until you see something that isn't a left leaning outlet, as well as Meta responding to that and outright blocking the news. How did that help Canadians as a whole? It didn't. It has eliminated our freedom of choice, and I think a lot of Canadians don't even realize it. They just suddenly stop seeing things that they would have otherwise seen. And you think you have freedom, but you really only have freedom to choose from a select number of what the government has approved you're allowed to choose from.
So what would you do, and we just got about 30 seconds to rectify this situation so that people get a variety of opinions so that they can think critically for themselves?
I think the government needs to get out of mandating outcomes. That's not healthy for anybody at all. It's not fair for anybody at all. And leave algorithms alone. The internet is a free global market. Get out of the way.
Well, Jasmine, we're running out of time. We'll have to have you back. Fascinating conversation. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for today. Thanks to my guest, Canadian entrepreneur and podcaster Jasmine Laine. I'm Jocelyn Bamford. Thank you for watching Canadian Innovators. If you're an innovator, tell us your story. Write to us at info@thenewsforum.ca, and we'll see you next time.